Slender the Arrival. Boy, did Blue Isle Studios and Parsec Productions outdo themselves with this one. In case you didn't know, Slender the Arrival is a commercial version of Slender the 8 Pages, as well as its successor. It is honestly my most favorite Slender game out of all the ones that have been made, and in this video, I'm gonna pick through it and explain exactly why it's such a great and magnificent Slender game. The game is split into 5 chapters in the original campaign, but by this point in time, it's grown a lot. It's gotten a secret level, an optional level, its 4th chapter split apart into 3 separate chapters, a slightly extended beginning and ending that allows you to do a bit more than you were originally able to do, and even a level that's a complete unaltered remake of Slender the 8 Pages, but used assets from Slender the Arrival to make it instead, that gets unlocked once you beat the game. Not to mention that the game's main storyline was written by the cast of Marble Hornets. How awesome is that? There's a lot to love about this game, from its amazing use with horror elements to just general gameplay, and I'll be sure to touch on all of it. Let's go through this chapter by chapter. The game starts with a short animation with some pretty ominous music, with words appearing during the animation, saying, "So often are we guided by our devotion, our love, our affection, a bond that pulls us down paths not bargained. And when you find yourself alone as he casts out that bedeviling gaze, how far will it carry you?" Not only are the words themselves foreboding, but during the parts of the animations where the words show up, there's a shadow of what seems to be a little boy if you look closely, which already shows that there's going to be more to this game than meets the eye. This won't be the standard Slender experience that you're used to. You can see that they're throwing in additional characters, so they could just as easily throw in other new elements that you aren't expecting. Then you're thrown into the gameplay, starting beside your car that's been stopped by a fallen tree. There's a nearby sign that says that a house, Kate's house that you would later arrive at, is for sale, but you're not coming here to buy it. You're coming to help Kate sell it. The game didn't even give you the luxury of driving to the house. It puts something in your path that forces you to go on foot, which ends up making you feel more vulnerable already. The music that plays as you travel to the house is calm and soothing, but has a slight sinister edge to it. It perfectly matches the setting as you walk to Kate's house. The environment is bright, sunny, well lit. The chirping of birds and the rushing of wind through the trees accompanies you. But the trees that surround you, that puts to mind the original Slender. That game taught you how to really be afraid of the surrounding trees, because you don't know if you'll suddenly see Slenderman standing among them. And the sound of footsteps appearing to the left of you mainly doesn't help that. And as you approach the house, the area gradually becomes darker and darker until it's nighttime by the time you arrive at Kate's house. If you know Slender games, you know that the darkness is not your ally. It feels like Slenderman could arrive at any time to capture you, giving you the feeling that you need to get indoors, and fast. Entering Kate's house immediately takes away the outside ambience, leaving only a faint, deep, hollow rumbling sound that already makes you tense, as you now feel that even the house isn't safe. The game wants to make sure that just because you're inside, it doesn't mean the fear is gone. However, there are no threats in the house, allowing you to travel around it as much as you please, though you won't be able to make sense of any of the upstairs rooms without first grabbing the flashlight from the first floor, as the upstairs rooms are pretty much pitch black. Upstairs, at the end of a hall, lit by a fallen lamp, is a lone door far away from the others, giving you enough visual stimuli to say that this door is important. And it is, because it's Kate's room. But the door is locked, so that means Kate must have locked herself in, right? But you don't know if she's alive, or if you'll find her lying dead on the ground. The silence coming from the room only amplifies your worry as you search for a key, and of course the key needs to be in one of the pitch black rooms of the upper floor. Even with your flashlight guiding your path, it doesn't feel safe. Slenderman, or something else, could attack you or at least deliver a good jump scare. It really does a good job of keeping your attention with you, and you know that when you open that door to Kate's room, you could very well find Kate lying dead on the ground. But when you open her door, she isn't in there. The room is in a heavy state of disrepair, the window shattered, pages worth of Slender scrawlings plastered all over the walls, and even more scrawlings on the walls themselves. The sight of this room, accompanied by the increasingly ominous music that plays as the room is revealed, is enough to make your spine clench. Without any dialogue, there are even visual clues in the room, which geniusly shows you what you have to do next. There's a piece of paper on the desk reading "To the Woods," a drawing of the radio tower on the wall directly adjacent to the broken window, with the words "Can you see it?" and the window itself looking out onto the forest with the radio tower faintly visible in the distance. Just observing the room for a bit is enough for you to figure out what's needed to do. After picking up the page on the desk, a few seconds pass before a feminine scream sounds from the distant woods in the direction where the broken window is looking. All of this is telling you that you need to investigate the scream, but knowing that Slenderman is out there, plus the broken window with a scream coming from the forest, is enough to tell you that Kate must have jumped out the window while in pursuit of Slenderman. And now you really won't want to go out there because you'll be walking right into Slenderman's territory, but you'll need to in order to find your missing friend. Outside, there's a missing child poster of someone named Charlie Matheson Jr., which gives even more cause for concern. Kate isn't the only person that Slenderman has been stalking, and as you find more of the same missing posters later on, your worry will only grow. You activate 3 generators along the way to the forest, where the scream was heard, but you aren't traveling alone. If you were to look in the distance, you'll see the silhouette of a familiar figure watching you before disappearing with a bit of camera distortion. Slenderman's aware that you're here, and you can imagine he won't be happy if you try to rescue the very person he's captured. Luckily, you don't need to go straight into the forest right away, which, by the way, has an actual name now. The forest is within the bounds of a park named Oakside Park, as a sign clearly labels it, and off to the side of the entrance, there's another house. Only this one has been completely ravaged by fire, the wood charred and blackened, the doors and windows missing, pieces of the structure having crumbled away. Not only does the appearance of this house inherently look creepy, but if you choose to approach it, an ominous cue of music plays, accompanied by the faint sound of static, the very kind you'd expect your camera to make when Slenderman's close, and given that you are playing a Slender game, it subconsciously makes you feel that venturing inside the house will be dangerous. Do you dare step through its doorway? Are you brave enough? You don't know what could be lurking inside, or if there's anything inside at all. If you enter the house, the atmosphere around you immediately darkens and the same deep hollow rumbling from Kate's house occurs again. This foreboding touch to add to the house was great. The ambience doesn't make you feel safe, just like in Kate's house, but the added touch of darkening the area makes your range of view severely limited. Prior to stepping inside the house, you'd be able to look through its doors and windows and see deeper into it, as your vision's range is longer. But once you're inside, the atmosphere immediately becomes darker than it needs to be, making it difficult to see what's ahead of you. You can progress further into the house, but something could easily lunge at you out of the darkness, and you won't be able to see it coming. The tension only grows when you hear the distorted sound of crying in the house. Now you know for sure, something's in here with you, but you don't know what it is or if it's friendly. Once you see the figure though, it truly puts a shot to your chest. His body is skeletal, starved, the skin pulled tight across the bones. His hair is messy and matted and his eyes are hollow sunken voids that stare lifelessly at the ground. This being that stands before you is a truly terrifying mess of a human. The figure is turned away from you, facing a wall, and you've seen horror scenarios like this before. If you walk over to the figure, he'll turn around and jump scare you. But given that he's also crying, it gives you conflicting thoughts. Just the sight of this thing makes you want to run away in fear, but seeing him crying makes you feel as though he's the victim and is harmless. But drawing close to him kicks that theory out the window as he'll whirl around and lash out at you rather violently before vanishing mysteriously. Not only did this encounter show that this creature is clearly dangerous and not something you'll ever want to encounter, but that the game also played with your expectations before delivering the reveal in a brutal and shocking way, and also that this game has shown itself to have more than a simple Slender game traditionally would. A Slender game as big as this one wouldn't show this random figure at the beginning of the game and then have him absent for the rest of it. You know that he will arrive at some point of the game, and you won't know when, but you know it's coming. It's at this point that now there's nothing left to do but enter Oakside Park. Before you do though, there's an open booklet with crazed writing on the open pages. Phrases like, "He came for me, why didn't I listen, don't let him in, help me," and a few other things. It's showing the clearly declining mental state of someone who you might assume at this point is Kate, and this in turn only fuels your curiosity and paranoia. If the ominous message at the start of the game, the abandoned houses, and the terrifying skeletal figure didn't make it clear enough, this booklet makes it evident. You're getting more than what you bargained for when you bought this game. So now we come to the chapter that's based off of the main game's premise, the 8 pages. Once you enter Oakside Park and step through its chain link fence, there's a chance that the colors will fade in and out of grayscale, and if that happens, then eerie whispers can be heard out of nowhere, and you'll slow down in movement speed. Since this hasn't happened yet before in the game, you'll immediately be put off by it, unclear of what it is or what it's supposed to mean. It could be showing that your character is starting to grow insane under the influence of Slender Man, or it could just be an additional horror element to show that this place is dangerous. But what it actually is a visual and audio signal that Slender Man is in your head and watching you, even though he might not be visible to your eyes yet. How do I know this? One of CR's messages to Kate mentions that he hears noises outside his window at night, whispers that he's unable to ignore. These are them. These are the whispers. And by the time that CR had sent that message to Kate, Slender Man was already in his head, watching his every move. And now, the same holds true for your character. Upon entering the park, you'll find a path that leads to a landmark, and the landmark most likely has a page on it. When you enter this level for the first time, you might be thinking that this level is going to be exactly like Slender the 8 Pages, right down to the layout of the park. Only this time, the layout of the park is vastly different from the layout of the forest from Slender the 8 Pages. Landmarks such as the oil tankers, the large rocks, and the concrete pipe are now missing, and are replaced with things like a collection of large storage containers, a tent with a campfire in front of it, and a porta-potty. The landmarks are also generated in random locations of the park, as well as the pages being randomly generated on 8 out of 10 of the landmarks. And the park isn't just completely flat like the forest in Slender the 8 Pages, even containing a small quarry. You're playing the same premise, but you're in a different location, and it all makes this park seem potentially alien to you, especially on your first try. This level is also the one where you'll get your first clear visual of Slender Man, and he appears much more imposing and threatening than he did in Slender the 8 Pages. He has a more detailed suit, is slightly muscular, and is much taller. He even has a series of physical animations that he can perform, like a hunching animation, a walking animation, a head tilt animation, a reach out and grab you animation, and a few others as well. These animations, coupled with the new look, subliminally tells you that this Slender Man is a much more serious threat than the one in Slender the 8 Pages ever could have been. Knowing the original Slender the 8 Pages game, it's pretty straightforward what you have to do in this level, and it's therefore not too terribly terrifying, since its concept is one you're familiar with. But the concept continues in later chapters, and with an additional twist of its own that makes it perfectly spine-chilling. This is where the game starts to get interesting. After reliving the familiar experience, you'll wake up in a large field that's surrounded by rocks and boulders with trees sprinkled around here and there, and it'll be daytime. Given how the forest is nowhere near you, it'll be unclear exactly where you are, how you got there, or how long you've been out. But you won't have any time to think about it since you're out in the open now. Slender Man could show up at any second and attack you. You had seen how quickly it had turned from day to night in the first chapter, so it could very easily happen here as well. So you get up and continue along, and eventually arrive at the vastly large tunnel opening to the Coleman Mines. The moment you start to approach this place, a musical cue occurs that immediately starts with rapidly building tension that simmers down into a mysterious and vaguely ominous rumbling. The music cue tells you that this entrance to the Coleman Mines is important and is the way you'll need to go to progress. It's already pretty shadowy in there, so you won't like the idea of traveling around an abandoned mine while on the run from Slender Man, but the game forces you to conquer that fear and step into the darkness. The first room you start in on your journey is more like a short hallway with a chain link fence separating it, and right in front of the doorway you enter is a sign that explains that you'll need to activate at least 6 generators to power an emergency lift out of the mine. The game is blatantly saying here that you're going to need to do a repeat of the previous chapter, only with more noticeable items to interact with and in an environment that's completely different from the one you're used to. But you've already done this premise in an altered environment, so how bad could this be? Well, you will see just how hard it is just by stepping through the next doorway, as you'll be greeted with a huge room with multiple other doorways, even an upper catwalk. Right in plain sight is the emergency lift, the exact one you'll need to use to get out of the mines, and a single generator sitting in front of it. Activating the generator makes it begin to hum, a few corridors and pathways opening up for you to explore, and loud clangs echoing through the mines as random lights get turned on. The lights don't provide much illumination, but it helps a little, and you'll already be seeing that the other paths are giving you room to explore the mines. There are even 6 little red lights on each generator, and every time you activate a generator, one of its red lights will turn green, allowing you to keep track of how many generators you've activated. Activating a second generator, however, instantly turns things more intense, and it does so like the flick of a switch. When a second generator is activated, you'll hear a disturbing vocal sound. It's like a cross between a chitter, a murmur, and a growl, and the sound echoes throughout the mines. You'll swiftly realize that this scenario doesn't only have Slender Man this time. This is further enforced by a music track that will instantly begin to play, one that's low and ominous with random crescendos, and it constantly gives you the feeling that you're in deep trouble. There is something else lurking in these mines, and now it's looking for you, and you don't know where or when it'll strike. You'll hear running footsteps nearby, which will only confirm your fear, but once the enemy is revealed, it's unexpected and terrifying. The music will gain a couple extra sounds, being a drumming that pounds rhythmically and a highly discordant violin that'll set you on edge. This enemy is the Chaser, a human wearing a white hoodie, blue jeans, and gray shoes, as well as a damaged and burned white mask. The clothes are all heavily stained with blood. It screeches and snarls as it runs towards you. It has unlimited stamina and is relentless, meaning that it can easily catch up to you and attack you. If it catches you, you'll get a clear view of it pinning you down and then striking you repeatedly before running off into the darkness, leaving you wounded and at a limp for a short bit. Unlike Slender Man, you can actually see the Chaser moving instead of just standing still. You can see it charging towards you, and witnessing the enemy running at you, instead of it only moving when you're not looking, is always more terrifying. And that's what I absolutely love about this section of the game. Trapped in an unfamiliar location, full of dark and shadowy corridors, no weapons on hand, with a frightening creature that fills you with a raw primal fear and makes you just want to turn and run. This is beautifully crafted, a perfect horror scenario, and the fact that it's in a Slender game makes it that much more effective. If some other horror game had done this, it wouldn't be as scary. These situations are more common than you'd think in horror games. Take for example Vanish. But when you go into a Slender game, you have different expectations for the gameplay, so this kind of scenario is much more powerful as a result. Thankfully, even though you can't kill this new enemy, you still have a means of hindering it. You can use your flashlight to blind the Chaser temporarily, so you can make a quick getaway. Not only does this game already provide you with a second and new antagonist who behaves differently than Slender Man, but the game also gives you the ability to use your only source of guidance as a defensive mechanism against this new enemy. I gotta say, that's pretty clever. Activating all 6 generators allows you to get onto the emergency lift and escape, letting it take you up and out of the mines. Even as you step off the lift and into the tunnel that waits for you at the lift's end, you'll know that you're far from done with Slender Man. You might have escaped the blood-soaked human, but you've still got Slender Man to worry about. He's not letting you go that easy. The tension you felt from the last chapter will soon fade once you exit the tunnel and into the open mountains. Music will begin to play, music that is both soothing and ominous at the same time, correctly giving off the implication that even though things have settled down now and you seem safe, there's going to be more that you'll need to deal with. This level doesn't have much to it, just a means of sitting back and relaxing after the terrifying ordeal you had just gone through. It's good that the game gives you this break, especially if it's your first playthrough. You'll have been more terrified of the last chapter if this was your first time running through the game, so this window of relaxation is well needed. All you need to do is travel along the path in the mountains. Along the way will be a very worn out and old looking teddy bear with the name Charlie written across its torso, sitting against a tree. Interacting with it will trigger the optional level of the game. Though it won't further your own journey, it will provide insight to the lore of the game. Once you click on the bear, the screen immediately begins to turn grayscale as the eerie whispering voices you heard before return, and knowing what they were in reference of before, it'll set you on edge. Whatever level this bear is going to take you to, it's bound to have Slenderman as an even more prominent threat. I'll detail the optional level of the game after I finish with this one. Whether you choose to select the bear and play the optional level, or not even select the bear at all and continue on your way, the path will take you to a very small cave-like tunnel. Once you travel through it, you'll arrive at a small metal building with a couple of visible pages that have different scrawlings on them. The first one being torn and reading "I want to die" over and over again, and the second one reading "Outside, I need to die before it catches me. I'm sorry for any part that was my fault. Everything's leaking out the back of my head. Hands have teeth. Please tell no one I loved them. It's back now. Hide." The second message especially will now seriously put you on edge, expecting something frightening to show up and attack you, so you'll want to hide somewhere, but the only place you could hide is behind a couple of rolling storage crates with long wooden boards propped up against them. It won't be much cover if the thing spots you, but it'll be something. So you run around behind it and come across something you didn't expect. A TV with a VCR, and 2 tapes, one next to a file labeled HOMESTEAD, and the other simply labeled with a couple of trees and a crudely drawn Slenderman. The game is now clearly giving you a chance of which nightmare you'll want to step into first by presenting you with the 2 tapes. And though the stage selection part of the main menu shows the escape level coming before the Homestead level, they could technically be done in any order. Whichever one gets done first, the open door from where you came from will now be shut and locked, essentially trapping you in the small building. And you won't know how the door got closed and locked or who had done it. But you'll be stuck in the building until you finish playing through the other tape, at which point a separate door that leads you farther on will now be open. This is the optional level of the game. You start out on a sandy beach, surrounded by sand toys and a teddy bear, now in perfect condition. A little ways away, behind a fence and out of access for you, are 2 adults, one male and one female, sitting on the ground facing each other and talking. The female calls to you that lunch will be in 5 minutes, referring to you as Charlie. This makes it more than likely that you're playing as Charlie Matheson Jr. He's already been introduced to you with a missing poster in the first level. But they wouldn't just make a level where nothing horrifying happens, would it? Of course not, especially not in a Slender game. Something bad is going to happen to your character, but you don't know when it'll be or what it'll be. You'll notice something twinkling in the distance, and once you make your way towards it, you'll see that it's a piece of a toy train. There's another piece of the train farther away, and another even further on, and you'll realize that you're being led with a whole trail of them. After seeing this, you'll not want to follow the train pieces, as you know that something bad is going to happen to Charlie if you do. But nonetheless, you'll be forced to proceed. After following the train pieces into the forest, the trail will abruptly end, but you will have dropped down a cliff that, despite being small, is unable to be climbed over, forcing you deeper into this worrying situation. All the while that you've been picking up the train pieces, Charlie's parents have been calling out to him, playfully at first, but once you enter the woods, their voices transition from playful to panicked, further ratcheting up your fear and paranoia. As you run through the woods, trying to find a way out by following the voices of Charlie's parents, you can also hear Charlie sniffling and crying, which makes you not only fear for yourself, but also for Charlie, and the feeling of Slenderman being all around you and watching you will fill your mind in droves. Finally, you'll end up reaching a dead end, with the voices of Charlie's parents just over the inaccessible hill in front of you, and there'll be black tentacles extending from behind the hill as well. Slenderman got to them before you could. You won't be able to budge, and once you turn around, you'll find out why. Tentacles have approached from behind you as well, trapping you in place. The situation gets even more terrifying and heartbreaking as, for the first time, you'll hear the character you're playing start to scream in terror, crying for help. The tentacles begin to tightly bind across his face as one last anguished cry from Charlie's dad is heard, fading away in an echo before the level ends. This level outright tells you that Charlie was taken by Slenderman, but you'll still be left wondering what exactly happened to him afterwards. The tape with the trees and Slenderman drawn on its label will take you to this level. Despite being short, it has an absolutely amazing horror sequence with a tension that doesn't let up. It starts with Kate on her bed, scribbling on some paper. Then she looks out the window into the rainy night as the camera filming her begins to glitch a little. Slenderman's nearby, and she knows it. She picks up the camera and turns on her flashlight. In a clearly terrified voice thick with tears, she whispers,
"He's here. Close on the windows and doors. Just don't let him in."
This is the second time now that the character you're playing as has made it vocally clear that they're scared out of their wits, which brings about the frightened feeling you got when playing as Charlie. You then need to run around the house, closing the doors and windows that are left open, 8 in total. All the while, Slenderman visibly lurks outside, trying to get into the house. The music that plays during this sequence is intense, horrifying, and nerve-wracking, and it pumps crazy amounts of adrenaline into you as you rush to make sure that Slenderman doesn't get inside. Ominous and paranormal occurrences like the piano plinking out discordant notes, doors slamming shut all by themselves, the radio turning on without you doing it, and loud banging on the doors leading outside ends up making the situation even more tense and terrifying for you. And this makes you more afraid of Slenderman than you ever were before in any of the previous chapters, as you're rushing around the house and just praying that he doesn't get inside. Once you close all the windows and doors, Kate will whisper again, saying,
"I need to hide."
If Slenderman ends up getting into the house before you close all the windows and doors, she'll whisper the same phrase. At this point, you'll need to run upstairs to Kate's room, and the dash there is even more tension-driven now. Not only is it a bad idea to go to Kate's room, where it's a one-way dead end that you could easily end up trapped in, but you'll be expecting a scare to occur once you get there. Once you open the door, Slenderman will be right up in your face, right? Well, almost. Once you enter the room, Slenderman is nowhere in sight. But once you close your bedroom door, he immediately appears behind you, causing Kate to bolt towards the window and jump through it, shattering glass loudly as the level ends. The whole sequence of events that plays out in this short chapter is just brilliant. Alone in your house on a dark and stormy night, and outside is a hostile force that wants in really badly. The ominous music, the paranormal happenings, the ratcheting up of tension, and the utter helplessness that you feel in this situation are perfect. What good could closing all your windows and doors do to keep out the Slenderman? He can easily just teleport inside. The fact that this hopeless plan is the best shot your character has at surviving just makes this chapter all the more better. The tape that's next to the file titled Homestead will take you to this level. This is the longest level in the game, and it's got a unique feel to it and a whole new level of terror. This time, you take control of CR, Kate's friend, as he explores the Matheson farm. A few seconds after the level starts, he says in a low murmur,
"The date is September 19th. My name is CR, on site of the Matheson family farm, continuing my investigation in Charlie's disappearance. Let's see what we can turn up."
Unlike the other two characters you've controlled where you've heard them speak, CR doesn't sound as frightened as Kate or Charlie did. More like intrigued. Music plays as soon as the level starts, and the music is strongly mysterious and foreboding. It gives off the impression that there's a lot of mystery surrounding this farm, and that you're going to uncover it all in this chapter. Things aren't threatening as you progress, but the feeling that something threatening is lurking about doesn't let up during your exploration. Something about this farm just doesn't feel right, and it's not the fact that it's been abandoned for years. You'll find a silo that you need to traverse in order to progress, but it's far too dark inside. A nearby generator will need fuel to power the inside of the silo. This is just the first time that the game is giving you an objective for this level, but they won't make it simple to get. When you travel through the vast cornfield and arrive at an open cellar door, it becomes clear that you need to enter it to find the gasoline for the generator. Gasoline is often stored in the cellar, so this would be a logical place to look. However, the moment you step down the stairs into the cellar, the area instantly darkens quite a bit and a humming, chilling ambience begins to play. You've seen this happen before, haven't you? In the very first level of the game, you have the choice of entering a burned down house, and there is a bony, disheveled, frightening person within its walls. It has been a while since you've seen that terrifying figure. Is this where it'll make its return? Given how you don't have a flashlight in this level, you'll need another source of light to see where you're going. Luckily for you, a control panel on the wall turns on the overhead lights in the cellar, but the lights are faulty and poorly working, flickering constantly and blinking out quite often. It doesn't look safe, but it's where you should be looking if you need gasoline. The cellar is like an underground labyrinth, full of compressed, winding pathways that make you feel vulnerable and unsafe. Not a lot of room to move or run if you need to. If you're claustrophobic, then this part of the level will mess you up. The lights are your biggest nemesis in the cellar though. They continue to flicker and sputter out at random points, and any second they could flicker back on to reveal something horrifying all up in your face, a perfectly executed jump scare. If there really is something dangerous creeping around this territory that you've wandered into, then the lights blinking out in the cellar would be the opportune moment for it to strike. But for every corner you turn and every room you enter, nothing jumps out at you. You hear footsteps in the dark, childlike giggles from the left and right. The tension is there, but you never get any relief from it. The game really starts to torture you once the end of the hallway lights up to reveal a figure. A certain figure that should look very familiar if you've explored the burnt house in the first chapter. Yes, that's the same horrifying skeletal figure from the burnt house, standing idly at a distance in the corridors and barely illuminated by the faulty overhead lights. They flicker for a second and the figure disappears without a sound. Now your fears have been confirmed. There is indeed something else on this farm with you. And now it knows you're here too, if it didn't already prior to you entering the cellar. After collecting the gasoline and exiting the cellar, you'll notice that the sky has now changed, getting darker as the sun is now setting. This will remind you when it got darker very quickly in the first chapter, and in this game, you're aware that you're not safe from the Slender Man at night. That in turn will immediately put you on edge, and worst yet, you now need to travel back through the large cornfield to get back to the generator. But this time, the moment you set foot into it, something new happens. A humming ambience instantly starts to play, followed by chipping and chittering that travels from ear to ear if you're wearing headphones, and you'll also faintly hear running footsteps in the corn husks. The footsteps alone tell you that you're being pursued, and your mind will immediately jump to the skeletal figure from the cellar. If you turn around to see your pursuer, you'll see that it is indeed the skeletal figure, and visually beholding it charging towards you with malice in its eyes makes you twice as terrified as before. Simply imagining this thing chasing you is scary enough, but actually seeing this thing chasing you makes the situation a whole lot worse. And unlike your encounter with the chaser, it doesn't relentlessly run at you. It dashes for a while before stopping for a few seconds, then runs again, then stops. It's toying with you. It knows that it's fast enough to catch you, but it wants to keep you scared. Also, unlike your encounter with the chaser, you don't have a flashlight this time. You can't blind this creature. Just taking one look at this deranged thing will trigger a hard fight or flight response in you, but you don't have any defensive mechanism with you this time. What other option is there but to run for your life? You thankfully are able to escape this terror, at least for now, and make your way back to the generator by the silo. After activating the generator, the lights in the silo will turn on, and though they don't flicker and sputter out constantly like the lights in the cellar, they still don't provide much illumination. The silo creaks and groans as you walk through it and out the other side, making you wonder with worry how much longer it'll stay standing before it finally collapses and buries you. Once you make it through the silo, you'll need to find a gate key, which isn't too hard to find thankfully. After getting the key, it's time to go back through the silo. But the gate that this key unlocks is in the cornfield, and now you know that this hostile skeletal creature is hiding in there, waiting for you to come back so it can ambush you again. And after you get through the silo again, the day cycle has progressed further to the point of it being nighttime, putting you in a more fearful situation as Slenderman's influence on the environment is now getting stronger. When you step into the cornfield and head for the gate, the exact same humming ambience will occur, along with the chipping and chittering, but a wooden thumping similar to tribal drums will now be added to the ambience, traveling from ear to ear, again if you're wearing headphones. It gives you a stronger sense of urgency as the running footsteps of the skeletal figure follow you, all the way to the gate. When you unlock the gate, you're instantly faced with a church whose lawn is completely littered with graves of the dead members of the Matheson and Hayes families. There have been a lot of victims at this place, likely many more than you thought there were. When you enter the church, the door instantly slams shut behind you, And when you turn around, you'll be faced with someone you might have forgotten until this point. Slender Man. He doesn't attack, however, and only stands there for a couple of seconds before vanishing with a bit of camera static. Some doll pieces will be littered on the ground, and once you pick any of them up, a distant, distorted screech will be heard from a locked side door in the church. The screech will make your mind instantly jump to the skeletal creature, and your suspicion will be correct as some running footsteps head for the door. The door breaks open as a skeletal figure scrambles inside, glaring around the room with a deep guttural hissing and then barrels towards you. This time, instead of being in a wide open cornfield, you're confined in a small church house with this thing, and getting away from it will seem much harder. It'll make you practically paralyzed with fear, even though you'll want nothing more than to escape from the church and get away from this creature. And luckily you can, by running into a small corridor that leads to the pew and then running out the open doorway, slamming the door behind you. The skeletal creature will shriek and pound on the door in fury, and you won't know how long the door will hold up in time for you to get away. You need to run and find a place to hide, and fast. A small ruined house can be seen at the end of the path. Surely it could provide you with some cover, right? The moment you enter the ruined house, you'll hear the side door of the chapel break down with a distant loud crash, and you'll know that the door finally gave in and the creature will now be chasing you again. But you haven't found a good place to hide yet. The attic seems like the best of your options to go to in order to hide, so you dash up the stairs into the attic of the house. Once there, you're met with a shocking sight. Just like in Kate's room, the walls are full of mad scrawlings and pieces of paper with even more scrawlings written on them. Someone else went through the same mental deterioration that Kate had. When you drop down through a trapdoor into a bathroom, a barricaded door in the house is instantly smashed open by the skeletal figure. A loud screeching ambience will start to play, filling you with tension and adrenaline as the creature chases you with its ferocious guttural growling. You have no idea where the rooms in this house will lead, and you don't know if you'll be fast enough to get away. But the only thought on your mind at this point is to just run. After running out of the house, the camera drops and shows CR's legs running past, followed closely by Charlie's legs. Static is flaring on the camera's vision, and then the static abruptly stops. The camera is picked up before the tape ends, but you don't know who it was that picked up the tape. Could CR have doubled back to grab the camera that he dropped? Could Slender Man have found it and took it for himself? It all gives you an unknown feeling as to what had happened next after the events of that tape. This tape is also enough evidence to tell you that the skeletal figure is in fact Charlie Matheson Jr., the boy on the missing posters. He was abducted by the Slender Man at a very young age and starved beyond recognition, and now he's a proxy of the Slender Man, a simple pawn in a greater game at play. After watching both tapes, the door that leads you further up the mountain will now be open, and you can now exit the small building and continue on your journey. Dark, suspenseful music that's brimming with determination plays as you climb up the mountain to get closer to the radio tower. You'll find a cave that seems to lead deeper and downward into the mountain, though it doesn't end up where you'd expect. As you travel through the cave, you'll come across crazy writing all over the cave walls. If you thought the crazy writing in the open notebook prior to entering Oakside Park was showing the decline of a person's mental state, then this shows that concept 10 times stronger. It's clear that whoever wrote these scrawlings are teetering on the brink of going completely insane. The writing gives off this very unsettling air to it, making you feel more and more tense and worried. And there's guaranteed to be a point where you'll be so uneasy that you won't want to read it anymore. When you make it to the end of the cave tunnel, the atmosphere will immediately turn red, and upon stepping outside again, you'll see a raging forest fire. A large hill leads upwards with a radio tower at the top, the very same radio tower that was hinted at to be a safe haven from the Slender Man. At this point, a new aura of music starts playing, one that's fast-paced and packed with much more tension than any of the music tracks before it. And that will end up putting copious amounts of adrenaline into your brain, as you'll now be fearing for your life more than you ever had been. The screen will be continuously fading in and out in grayscale, slowing you down, and eerie whispers coming from all around you. While this used to only happen in brief moments to remind you that Slender Man was watching you, it is now happening constantly, without pause. Slender Man is now all around you, and he is furious. You'll need to run up the hill towards the radio tower while dodging the flames in a highly aggressive Slender Man, who now is able to use his tentacles to capture you if you're not careful. The camera constantly glitches now as you run up the mountain, making it difficult to tell how close you are to Slender Man. The tentacles make a chilling sound as they slither through the air, the sound getting fainter as you get farther from them. You'll know that once the sound gets louder, it means the tentacles are getting closer, making the sound fill your mind with fear every time you hear it. Once those tentacles grab you, it's game over, so Slenderman's got a much farther reach than he used to have now. Once you make it to the radio tower, you'll see that there's a small building underneath it, and running inside it will slam the door behind you after entering. Something will hit the door from the outside, making a loud echoing bang. Slenderman or something else is trying to get inside, which doesn't give you time to feel like you're safe and instantly makes you want to figure out what to do next in order to get farther away from whatever is trying to get in. A key will be found to unlock a door that leads to a pitch black winding corridor. Your flashlight will be of no use anymore as the batteries finally die out once you open the door. The only helpful light source are the patches of flames at the corner of each turn that the hallway takes. This minimal source of light and direction from the fire must be used as best you can to get through the corridors before whatever is coming inside catches you. Upon opening the locked door, a panicked music cue will begin, which will put a spike of panic in you and make you bolt down the hallway on instinct. You'll be so focused on trying to get away that something may have passed over your head. Loud echoing footsteps that follow you, sounding like dress shoes. It can only be one thing: Slenderman walking through the corridors and coming after you. The fact that the footsteps are slow and calm, as if Slenderman isn't needing to hurry in order to catch you, will only frighten you further. There isn't any need for him to rush here. He's got this situation under control, and you know that you do not. Following the footsteps is a deep, horrifying, and threatening growling sound, noticeably deeper than the sounds Charlie makes, which means that these newer, scarier growls must be coming from Slenderman. Up until this point, he's been silent, but this new vocal sound of his will just make him come off as all the more dangerous to you, which will disturb you and strengthen your intent on getting away from him. At the end of the hallway is a room full of crazy scrawlings on the walls, the same kinds of writing in the cave from earlier in the chapter, and the door to the room will slam shut and lock as something pounds on it. At the far end of the room is a dead human, burned beyond recognition, and a beat-up, sparking tape recorder. Playing the recording will give you Kate and CR's voices, your fear constantly racking up the more you listen to the recording.
Kate, please.
I can't.
There's no other way.
I can't.
Kate! Oh God, no. I'm so sorry. Forgive me. I'm so sorry.
You'll only have a few seconds to comprehend what you just heard before a loud bang is heard from the locked door at the other end of the room. The fire near the door gets blown out as the door is knocked open, and then Charlie will come running out of the darkness towards you, growling. This will be both unexpected and terrifying because you didn't know that he had been following you, and unlike the other instances of meeting him, there's no escape this time. There's nothing you can do but watch in horror as he attacks you, striking you at an unnatural speed before everything cuts to black. The animation that occurs is unlike the attack animation of the chaser, and is instead a sped-up flurry of images depicting a humanoid attacking you with its hands. The view of the human is seemingly seen through water, or a blue web of some sort, and upon much further, closer inspection, an inspection that you won't have time to do at the moment, the humanoid actually appears to be Charlie as a normal child, and not as a skeletal figure. Now obviously this didn't actually happen. There's no way that Charlie would be able to revert back to his normal younger self just to attack you. I'll be honest, I don't have an explanation for this. The best I can do is guesswork, and my best guess is that this illusion is being caused by the Slenderman. He's able to get inside of people's heads, and by now he's definitely inside the mind of your player character. Since she's seen the missing poster of Charlie Matheson Jr. a few times now, the Slenderman could be pulling those memories of that face, the face of the past Charlie, and using them to change the look of the present Charlie. It could be Slenderman giving you the answer as to who the skeletal figure is. It could be a means of confusing your character in case he tries to fight back, or it could just be as simple as a scare tactic. All we can do is speculate on this one. When you wake up, you're in a dark, shadowy basement with a poorly working light overhead, constantly flickering and blinking out from time to time before turning back on, similarly to the overhead lights in the cellar at the Matheson farmstead. Charlie will be crouched by a small staircase, his head turning to follow you as you walk around. It's a classic horror scenario, a monster trapping the protagonist in a run-down basement, and it's extremely off-putting, making you paranoid as you expect him to suddenly attack at any moment. Charlie will prevent you from ascending the staircase until you pick up a letter from CR to Kate, and an open journal that seems to be from Charles Matheson, Charlie's father. After collecting both of these, Charlie mysteriously disappears and a weeping female can be heard from upstairs. A female crying may be something you've heard plenty of times before in horror games, and they're usually used to reveal a ghost or other monster of some sort that'll jump scare you when you least expect it. But what if it's your friend Kate, who you've been searching for this whole time? It's dangerous to investigate the crying. It could be a monster, or it could be your friend. You won't know unless you follow the sound. When you're traversing the shadowy and heavily ruined house, you'll recognize it as the same one from the first chapter of the game. But unlike your exploration of it before, you don't have your flashlight with you. Your visibility is greatly reduced, making you surrounded in mostly darkness. It makes the shadowy ruined house even more foreboding and frightening as you expect Charlie or something else to suddenly attack at any moment. When you arrive at the source of the crying, it's revealed to be Kate, quite dirty and burnt, kneeling on the ground. You'll at first want to approach her, but you'll be immediately skeptical as something doesn't seem quite right. A small area surrounding Kate, almost like an aura, is visually glitching and blurring like Slenderman does when he's seen on camera, and a constant camera distortion noise will be playing faintly as you draw closer to Kate. Once you actually make contact with Kate, however, the biggest reveal of the game happens as the glitches surrounding her vanish and the chaser from the Common Mines is now in her place, and the chaser jumps on you and attacks you. Seeing this happen is a greatly frightening reveal as you realize that the chaser has been Kate all along. The Slenderman was just disguising her as her normal self before you approached her just now. When Kate finishes attacking you, the camera cuts to black, then cuts back to normal, lying on the floor and viewing a pair of legs on the ground as if someone is lying there. It's unknown whose legs these are, your character's or Kate's. Given that Kate just attacked you, they're likely meant to be your legs, but someone who hacked outside of the camera in order to see the whole room had shown that the legs were from Kate's model. The developers could have just used Kate's model for this scene because the legs would be all that's visible, and it saves them the time of modeling an entirely separate character for the player. Plus, the title of this model is called Lauren Dead, so that all but confirms that this is your player character. The legs are dragged off screen and the camera cuts to black once more, ending the game. So much excellent usage of its horror elements, so many moments that played with your expectations, and a non-stop thrill ride from beginning to end truly makes this a Slender game unlike any other. The other Slender games simply involve the concept of collecting 8 pages and nothing more, and the maps in Slenderman's Shadow try to change it up a little by making there be something other than pages to collect in a few maps, making there more than 8 to collect sometimes, and not placing you in a forest, but the gist is the same and there's nothing truly unique about any of them. Haunt, the real Slender game, does have there be new areas to unlock with keys, as well as the Slenderman having slightly different mechanics. He's known as Mark Slender in this game, but that's where the uniqueness ends. Slender the Arrival has much more uniqueness to it than any of the other Slender games, with multiple chapters to it, a stage selection in the main menu, brand new enemies, extra game mechanics, and a seriously perplexing backstory to boot. It's definitely more than worth the $10.99 it costs on Steam, and I guarantee you'll absolutely love it. If you're wanting a Slender experience like no other, I highly recommend this masterpiece. The link is in the description. I remember the earlier days of me finding out about this game, where I'd be researching absolutely everything there is to know about it, and I had to redo my research to make this whole video, as well as doing some extra. Be sure to let me know what you think of Slender the Arrival in the comments down below, and also tell me which chapter of the game was the scariest for you, and why. Personally, the Homestead level will always be the most frightening to me. The pure atmosphere of the cellar just makes me tense the whole time. Even though I know that I'm not in any danger while I'm down there, I still get so frightened, and I usually have to face the floor the whole time just so that I don't get startled by Charlie. There are a couple of other levels that offer more exploration instead of a linear path, like the 8 pages and Into the Abyss, but for me, no scary moment in this game is more impactful to me than that cellar. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to let me know what you thought down below by leaving a comment, and be sure to like it if you liked the video. And if you'd like me to do any other analyses or theories on other horror video games, then let me know down in the comments below as well. I've personally got a couple of others in mind right now, being theories, but I won't divulge what they are. You'll see what they are when they come out. But in the meantime, thanks for listening to this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.